chalk up another one for the good guys. That's right. The sixth ranked offensive tackle in America, right? A 4-star, made his decision this morning for where he's gonna be playing football and attending school starting next year. Shout out to Tate Ratledge. Came down to Georgia and Tennessee, and shocker, he picked the Dogs over the Vols. He picked one of the best premier football programs in America over one of the worst. Who saw that coming? Anyway, the rich keep getting richer. All right, up today, another top 5 video. I did the one a few days ago. Asked you guys to give me some suggestions on some topics you'd like to see covered over the next week or so in sort of a top 5 type format. Lots of responses. I really appreciate it, guys. They were all good responses. I'm going to try to do as many of those as I can. But this is one I was planning on doing anyway, so we're going to start with this one today. The top 5 non-conference games of 2019. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. A little truth in advertising here before we get to today's video, top 5 non-conference games of 2019. And of course, this is sort of my favorite or whatever, but a little disclaimer here. I decided not to include the Georgia and Notre Dame game in this particular list of my top 5. Obviously, I think Georgia versus Notre Dame is one of the best 5 non-con games this year. And in fact, if you look up or do some searches online for some of the best non-con games of this coming year, UJ Notre Dame is number 1 on a lot of those lists. But I'm probably going to be making several videos between now and the time that game is played about just that game in particular. So I've decided to leave it off of this list and cover, I guess, the next 5 top non-con games in 2019. Here we go. Okay, now these aren't going to be in any particular order, so it's not like, you know, the first one is not the one I'm looking forward to the most or the least or anything like that. These are really in no particular order. We've got some opening week games here. We've got some mid-season games here. We've got some neutral site games here. We've got some, games played at one particular team's stadium. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with one of the earlier games of the year. Now, these two teams scheduled a home and home. First half is this year. Second half will be next season in 2020. LSU versus Texas. Round 1 coming up this season at Texas in Austin. So a road game for LSU. Some early lines are out for this game. And I'm going to be honest, I've seen lines on both sides here. I've seen Texas as much as a 2 or a 3-point favorite in some places. This morning when I looked, LSU was a 7-point favorite. I think this will be a pretty close game. I think 7 points is too much no matter which team you think is going to win here. With a 7-point spread, I would be looking to take the underdog. I think it's going to be a close game. Now, both of these teams have high expectations coming into 2019. Right, both won their bowl game to end the season. LSU, of course, finally knocking off Central Florida, giving them their first loss in a couple of years. Texas knocking off the Georgia Bulldogs in the Sugar Bowl. So both teams barely missed the playoffs, making New Year's Six bowls. Both teams have goals of making the playoffs in 2019. This game here is going to go a long way in determining which one of these teams is maybe an actual contender and which one maybe is a pretender. Now, both these teams, although they have a lot of offense coming back, particularly the starting quarterback for both these teams, and both these teams are high on their returning starting quarterbacks, both of these teams primarily known for their defense over the last few years. Now, I would give the edge offensively over what we've seen the last few years from these teams to Texas, but of course, Texas plays a lot worse defenses in the Big 12 than what LSU faces in the SEC, but neither one of these teams, or both of these teams rather, more known for their defense over the last few years. Of course, LSU tends to put players in the NFL on defense every single year and just keep reloading. Texas, one of the best secondaries in America, a really good defense. Last year, this is going to be a great game here. I mean, let's just be real. All these games I'm going to mention are going to be great. Everyone's going to be watching all of these games here. But these are two legitimate playoff contenders. And when I look through the rest of this list that I have coming up, there's a couple more games involving playoff contenders, but this one in particular, both of these teams, really, really high expectations. LSU looking to get over the hump, beat Alabama, and win the West. Texas, of course, looking to come out of the Big 12, win that for the first time in, 13 or 14 years. I think it was 2005 the last time they won it. Got to go through Oklahoma to do that. So this is a huge non-con game to start off the season. All right, let's stick with the home and home sort of deal here. This is round 2 of this game. Round 1 was played last year in Texas A&M. Texas A&M versus Clemson. Clemson won a thriller last year on the road at Texas A&M. Ended up being one of the closest games of the year for Clemson. That one in the Syracuse game. Really, they're only 2 close games for the year, pretty much. Texas A&M had sort of a typical Texas A&M season. They started off pretty good. Of course, took the early loss to Clemson. Couldn't beat Alabama, of course. But anyway, both these teams have high expectations. Again, Jimbo Fisher, year 2 now at Texas A&M. Dabo Swinney coming off an undefeated season and a national title. Clemson is a huge favorite in this game. If you look at the opening early lines that are out right now, they're about a 3-touchdown favorite. 21 was the number I saw this morning. Clemson is a tough place to play, and Clemson's offense is going to be unbelievable this year. Could they win this game by 21? Yeah. Again, though, if it's 21 points by the time this game comes around, I probably would take Texas A&M in the 21. I don't expect Texas A&M to win that game, but I just think 21 points is maybe a little bit too much here right now. We'll see sort of how these teams develop and unfold over the summer and things like that. But Clemson, obviously, a playoff and national title contender. All right, let's go ahead and round out these home and home games before we get to the last 2, which will be 2 neutral site games. This one's played in the middle of the season and is a rematch from last year. Notre Dame on the road at Michigan, of course. Last year, Notre Dame won a close one, a great game last year that Notre Dame won early in the season and sort of propelled them on their way to that undefeated 12-0 season where they made the playoffs before getting beat by Clemson. Michigan lost that one, close one, then ran off a string of wins, of course, before getting road graded at the end of the season by Ohio State for like the 20th year in a row. High expectations for both of these teams coming into this year. Both want to and feel like they can make the playoff. I don't think Notre Dame's making the playoffs this year. They've made a decision not to join a conference, which means they pretty much have to go 12-0 or rely on total anarchy in the other conferences, sort of a bunch of 2 and 3 lost conference winners, that kind of thing. I don't see Notre Dame going undefeated this season. This Michigan game is one of the reasons why. Other reason why, on the road at Georgia. Those are 2 tough road games, not winning both of those. It's unlikely, in my opinion, that they win either one. Michigan, I would say, has a better chance this year at the playoffs. Of course, they've got to get over the Ohio State hurdle. They've got a pretty good chance, though, especially if Ohio State struggles with new quarterback Justin Fields. You got a new coaching staff there led by Ryan Day. Justin Fields, hardly any college experience at all, and he's their only option at quarterback at this point. We've been over that. So this game becomes huge for both teams for obvious reasons. Hard to find a line on this game. Played in the middle of the season. It's hard enough to find lines for these games that are played early, week 1 and 2. Forget trying to find one for the middle of the season. My expectation at this point would be, since it's at Michigan, that Michigan's going to be a small favorite in this game. But, of course, both teams play a lot of games leading up to this, so we'll know a lot more about them by the time that rolls around. Notre Dame, listen, a lot of people hate Notre Dame. They're going to say, oh, who cares about this Notre Dame? Love them or hate them, this is going to be one of the biggest non-con. Now, every game Notre Dame plays is a non-con game. In fact, when you look up like best non-con games of the year or whatever, you do an internet search for it. Some people that rank their non-con games don't even include Notre Dame at all, since all their games are non-con. But I felt like it belonged on this list. Notre Dame versus Michigan, middle of the season. A lot of people will be watching this one. Could have playoff implications. It could be a playoff eliminator type game. Notre Dame will have a loss by the time they enter this game because Georgia's going to humiliate them. So there'll definitely be a playoff eliminator for Notre Dame. We'll see where Michigan is sitting, but I think this is one of the best 5 non-con games. All right, now we got 2 neutral site games played early in the year. This is something that's becoming more and more popular with every year that goes along. It's almost like bowl games to start the season, the way they keep setting these things up. And you got 2 pretty good ones this year. Kicking off the college football season, August 24th, a full 7 days before most teams play their first game, you've got the Miami Hurricanes and the Florida Gators at a neutral site in Orlando. Florida's about a touchdown favorite here. Now, they were a 10, 11-point favorite at one point. Probably came down the last 3 or 4 days, didn't it? What is going on at Florida? It's just an epic disaster. One of the worst 4 or 5 days you could possibly have as a program over this past weekend for Florida. Of course, going back to their quarterback, Jalen Jones, announcing he was leaving the team, and then it came out, he assaulted a couple of women. Then his roommate got mad, announces he's transferring. It turns out he had went to the coaches. They basically didn't listen to him. He wanted to move away from that guy. Jalen Jones, they were roommates. This Chris Steele I'm talking about now. Coaches wouldn't listen to him. He got mad, left. Dan Mullen and his wife flew out, tried to beg him to come back. Florida fans thought he was coming back. Now it looks like he's not coming back. And watching Florida fans do the flip-flop for the last 3 or 4 days has been absolutely hilarious. Of course, when they signed this guy, Chris Steele, who was the highest-rated recruit Florida signed in the 2019 class, he was the greatest player ever. Then when he left, very predictable. We don't need him. He's not that good. He's too soft. He wouldn't have played this year anyway. Blah, blah, blah. He was overhyped, yada, 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 yada. Then Dan Mullen hops the plane, goes out. It looks like maybe he's coming back, and then they're right back on board again. And then you look on Twitter, and this is unbelievable here. You got current Florida players and ex-Florida players tweeting negative things about Chris Steele while Dan Mullen is across the country in his living room trying to convince him and his parents to come back to Florida. I can't believe it didn't work out. Unbelievable. But anyway, this will be a good game. Now, Miami is going to have a lot of eggs in this basket here. This is Miami's toughest game of the season, period. You look at Miami's schedule, it's loaded with unranked teams. Virginia is probably the second best team on Miami's schedule this year after this Florida game. Florida can lose this game and recover. Now, whether they're capable of doing that or not, I mean, listen, if Florida loses to Miami, they're probably not good enough to then run the table. But the point is, the possibility would exist, at least for Florida. They would have games against some highly ranked teams down the road, LSU, Georgia. So they would have a chance to sort of move up a little. If Miami loses this game and then runs off a string of victories against a bunch of terrible unranked ACC teams, what is that really going to prove? Miami needs to win this game. Florida's a better team than Miami. A lot of question marks at Miami. Brand new coaching staff. Don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Is it going to be Tate Martell? Is it going to be Nkosi Perry? Is it going to be someone else? Is it going to be a combination? We don't know. What style of football does Manny Diaz want to run? He's a defensive guy. Is he going to look to play lights out defense and some conservative offense, a la Kirby Smart or Nick Saban 7-8 years ago? A lot of question marks. If I had to bet this game right now, I would probably take Florida to win. I'm not sure about the 7.5 just because there's a lot of crap going on down there right now. But of course, by the time this game is played, all that stuff will be in the rearview mirror. It'd be interesting to see how this line moves as we approach this game. But like I said, this kicks off the football season August 24th, full week before most other teams play neutral site in Orlando. These two teams haven't played in a long time. Every college football fan in America will be watching this game. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if this is the most watched college football game all season long. Why? Two big-name teams, in-state rivals, haven't played in a long time. Huge expectations for Florida after a 10-win season last year. Lots of excitement around Miami because of the new coaching staff and things like that. And there's nothing else to watch that day. This is literally it. Now, there's 3 or 4 other games that day, but they're terrible garbage games. If you're a college football fan, you will be watching this game, and I won't be surprised if it's the most watched game all year. All right, and wrapping it up here with the best non-con games of 2019. Another neutral site game. This one played in Texas over at Jerry World. Auburn versus Oregon. An interesting game here. An interesting game. Auburn, depending on where you look right now, about a field goal favorite in this game, around 3.5. I ain't buying it. I'm a believer in Oregon this year. I think Oregon is a better football team than Auburn, and I definitely think they're better coached. They've got a better quarterback with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert would have been a top 10 pick in the NFL draft if he'd have came out. Chose to come back for his senior year. Now, Oregon's got some pieces to fill in. They lost some stuff from last year, but so did Auburn. And I'm just not a buyer in Auburn this year. I think Oregon's the better team. So if I was betting this game right now with Auburn as a 3.5-point favorite, I would take Oregon all day long. We got a couple of months to kind of figure that out, though. Oregon has to win this game, though, don't they? Like it or not, whether it's fair or not, and we can debate that, the Pac-12 just does not get a lot of respect right now from the college football world. That includes fans. That includes teams from other conferences, I think. I think, unfortunately for Oregon, it includes the playoff committee. Oregon's got to win this game. If Oregon loses this game, even if they go 11-1 and win the Pac-12 and finish 12-1, they're going to be the team that gets left out if they lost this opening week game to Auburn. Well, left out versus any other one-loss conference champion is what I mean. In other words, if Alabama and Oregon each finish the season conference champions with one loss, Alabama will be ahead. If Georgia finishes SEC champions with one loss, they'd be ahead of Oregon. If Oklahoma or Texas finish with one loss and a Big 12 champion, they'll be ahead of Oregon with one loss as a Pac-12 champion. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, whatever team you want to pick from the Big Ten, if they were to finish with one loss and a Big Ten title, they would be ranked ahead of a one-loss Oregon and obviously Clemson. So if you're Oregon, you've got to win this Auburn game, or you've got to cross your fingers and pray that there are several two-loss conference champions. It's your only hope, in my opinion, to make the playoffs. I think you'll start off on the right foot and probably get a win there. These aren't official predictions. It's just sort of where my head's at right now. Auburn, similar situation to Florida with the Miami game. Auburn can lose this game and still make the playoff. Now, they would have to run the table, which would mean beating a top 5 Georgia team, a top 5 Alabama team, top 5, 6, or 7 LSU team, maybe a top 15 Texas A&M team. I think Auburn plays Florida this year too. So if they lose this game, it doesn't look good for Auburn. But because of the level of competition they play, if they were to go on some miraculous run, you know, they could still make the playoff having lost this game to Oregon. It wouldn't mean anything in the end. With Oregon, I just don't think it's that way. I think Oregon's got to win, or basically their season would be over at that point in terms of making the playoffs. We'll see. But this is an interesting game. A lot of people will be watching Auburn versus Oregon. Oregon's played a lot of high-profile games against the SEC, going back to some BCS title games, some opening season games. I think it was LSU they played to open the season one year, and haven't fared very well. We'll see how they do this year against Auburn. Anyway, those are the 5 non-conference games I'm looking forward to the most in 2019. Of course, not including the Georgia-Notre Dame game. And again, if you missed it at the beginning for some reason, I left Notre Dame and Georgia off this list intentionally because I'm sure I'm going to be making 2 or 3 videos just about that game in particular between now and the time it's played. So I didn't want to spend time on that game today. I wanted to devote the time to 5 other games that I may not talk as much about as I do the Georgia-Notre Dame game going forward. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching, and have a great morning.